was very uncertain where and how to begin this grocery store project. It seemed at first only natural to start in the 1900s and progress forward in a chronological order. But as the project grew, it's changed, at least for me it did. Obviously, grocery stores, from all the responses that I received, were special places. And so I wanted to choose a spot that was special to me when I was a child. And so I came back to Casey's here on 318 North Buckeye Street because this was a special place for a lot of kids and adults when I was growing up. And so I'm going to begin the story entitled The Grocery List here. And it's kind of ironic, but this whole project was a fluke. It started one day because I had a student who was doing absolutely nothing in my class, didn't have a project, and never could come up with an idea. And so finally I blew up one day and said, tomorrow you have a project, I don't care what it's about, you're going to do a project. And so the next day he came to school and I asked him what his project was, and he didn't have one. And I went nuts on him and asked him what he did last night, and he said, nothing, I went to Big Bear. And I said, that's it, you're going to do a story on Big Bear. It's a new grocery store, and it's fine, do it. So the next day he came to school, and he simply said, Mr. Shellick, Big Bear isn't going anywhere, it's boring. And I made the comment jokingly, you know, when I was a kid, and I was once, that grocery stores were fun places, and they were neat to hang out in, and besides that, if you didn't like one grocery store, you could walk a block and there'd be another one. And I told them there were probably 20 or 30 grocery stores in Celina when I was a kid. And they didn't believe me, so I started naming them. The next day, kids came to school, and my dad said there was one, and my mom said there. And that's how it began. It doesn't make any difference, I guess, how the project originated, but the fact that we're doing it, I feel, is important. From the very night that the project was in the Daily Standard, I received phone calls and phone calls and phone calls and letters, and it was incredible. People stopped by my house, stopped by my room. The entire community was excited about this everybody was excited about this project except my students, and that bothered me. The next day at school was a day I'll never forget because the phone never stopped ringing. I had kids taking messages and writing them on the board, and I was taking, it was fun, or at least I was having fun, and the kids were just kind of aghast at what was happening because they could not understand how anyone could be so enthused about a grocery store. And as the day progressed, my high school kids come in the afternoon, and they were, I think, appalled that I was so excited about a project they termed stupid. And finally, one high school student couldn't take it anymore after about the third phone call that last period of the day, and I was over there taking notes, and pictures were being promised to be brought in interviews, and I was very excited about it. And finally she said, what is it with these grocery stores? Don't you people have a life? And all of a sudden I knew why there was so much excitement about the project, at least from the older people. The answer to the mystery was in her question, don't you people have a life? And that's what it was. We all had a life that was much more simple than it is today. We lived in neighborhoods like this on Buckeye Street or all around Celina that were close-knit. You knew your neighbors. And each neighborhood throughout this entire city had its own personal neighborhood grocery. And they each had a grocer or grocers who were unique individuals who were distinguishable and obviously very memorable. And so we remembered, quite accidentally at first, but nevertheless we remembered those times because they were good times. They were simple times, as I said. And I was astounded after those numerous phone calls and letters, and I received 3 letters from Florida, and people remembered Minnie Brinkley fixing a certain type of sandwich and sitting on her step on her store on North Sugar Street and eating them, and know who they were with and what they put on their sandwiches. And they remembered Mr. Fetzer sending home a bag of candy, and Val Fortman did the same when the bill was paid on Saturday and the candy was sent home to the kids. And they remembered things that people wore 30 and 40 and 50 years ago, and what they said, and even 60 and 70 years ago. And I was amazed that they still had items that they purchased in those stores in the 1920s and 30s. And all of these wonderful memories would not have been shared if it were not for a project that was stumbled upon quite accidentally. And that, my friends, would have been a shame, because I have spent some incredibly enjoyable minutes and hours on the phone and in conversation with you people, and you've shared some times of your life that meant a great deal to you. And they mean a great deal to me, and I appreciate the opportunity that I've had to share those. And I thank you sincerely for that. But those times have disappeared all too quickly, not only in Celina, but all across this country. Casey's here on North Buckeye Street was a grocery that apparently harbored many, many fond memories within me. And I can't think of Casey's and not think of baseball, Little League baseball, and hot afternoons and dusty ball fields and frantic rides down this street. A perfect conclusion to a summer day. And I remember bursting through this screen door, an old wooden one, not this one. There's an old wooden one. And I remember it had some type of writing on, but that has escaped me. And storming back to the cooler in the back and grabbing the handle and snapping that door open. It's a sound that I had forgotten until now, but it's as distinct now as it was 30 years ago. And if you were in this store or a store like Casey's that had that old door type of cooler, you can hear that sound too. Kids would grab pops and grab snacks and gum and candy and pay Casey and greet him all at the same time. And he in turn would greet us. And we would come out here and sit on the steps, or there were benches, and there used to be a huge oak tree that sat right there. And we would prop up against that and talk and eat and drink and just finish whatever had to be done that particular day. And when that business was done, we would go back into the store, dispose of the trash, put our pop bottles in the wooden cases, and we would say goodbye to Casey, always. And he always returned that favor. But he always added, "I'll see you tomorrow." We always returned, and there were many, many tomorrows granted to lots of neighborhood children on this street, on North Buckeye Street, because we always knew that we were welcome back, and that was important to us. I remember visiting other grocery stores in Celina with friends, and they were all similar to this one. They all had huge candy displays and bottles of pop that were giant, and a friendly proprietor who made you feel welcome. And There was just an unwritten law that kids were welcome in that store. I'm not sure where kids are welcome today, and I'm not sure what childhood memories kids will cling to and remember. Certainly not malls and shopping centers, but hopefully there will be something in their lives that will be worth saving and storing, and more importantly, sharing at some point in their life. And I am equally uncertain what my students will get out of this project when it is finished, and if it gets finished. And I'll be quite honest with you, I will hate the moment that this project ends, because it's been like a great book. Each store has been a new chapter that I've rushed into earnestly and couldn't wait to get to the next. And I'll be terribly disappointed, as I have been when I finished a great book, because it was over. And each word and each page held things that were very important to me, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. I remember that very feeling oh so well when I finished reading To Kill a Mockingbird for the first time when I was a kid. And so I hope through all of this sharing and of stories and memories that we will go away feeling better, and that my students will go away knowing the importance of having a place that's like this, that's safe and fun to be at, and the absolute necessity of having lessons learned by caring adults who took the time to make children feel special. And I hope that my students who are here and that I will have in the future will have a place like my friends and I had at Casey's, a place that we knew when we left we were always welcome back.
I'm Virginia Wehrkamps, and this is my husband, Clarence. And we've been in the grocery business here since 1950 in Celina. But Clarence has been in the grocery business since he's 17 years old. Started with Kroger.
You want to tell us, Clarence, your Germantown store, or a little bit about that?
Germantown, well, when it was with Kroger's, I was with Dayton, in Dayton. Yeah.
And then you went to Germantown.
Germantown, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
And I run a store there for, oh my, hate to say it,
Quite a long while.
quite a long time. It's right.
And then he was still in the grocery business when the war broke out.
Yeah.
And we both went to work in a defense plant. And when the war was over, the defense plant shut down, and so we was out of work.
So we go up here?
So we came up here, and his brother-in-law wasn't well. That was Dewey Sheets. And he wanted to keep it in the family, so he asked us if we would be interested in having the store. And of course we was interested. We didn't.
We had a house, we sold our house, come up and bought a grocery store.
And the Dewey Sheets grocery store, the one we're talking about, is at the corner of Logan
and
Walnut.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. Corner
Now,
of Logan and Walnut.
And Dewey then had, when did he start that store?
Oh, that I don't know, but I do know he had it built to his own specifications.
So he started the store.
Mandy
that way.
Hillbold had it built for Dewey.
I'm going to leave the Wehrkamps, jump back in time to when Dewey Sheets owned the store, and actually we have found out that Dewey Sheets owned another store before moving into the one on the corner of Logan and Walnut. Dewey got his start in the grocery business with his brother Joe, pictured in this scene. This is a grocery store that existed in St. Mary's, Ohio, and he was a wholesaler. And he would sell groceries to all the local grocers in St. Mary's and even in this area. And that is where Joe worked prior to purchasing the store on Logan and Walnut. Information we obtained from the Dewey Sheets era was from Mrs. Lucille Steiner, who worked for both Dewey Sheets and then later for Clarence Wehrkamp.
And I worked for Dewey Sheets, and his first store was on Main Street, right beside the Shell service station, and it was on what then was called Drunkard's Curve.
Who owned that store originally?
And originally, Frank Shambaugh and his son Joe run the store and sold it to Dewey Sheets. And then Dewey moved his grocery down to the corner of Walnut and Logan in a building that was built by Amanda Hillbold, which later she sold to Dewey. And then he sold the grocery to Clarence Wehrkamp in Virginia.
And Dewey lived for another 32 years. What did he do? Do you remember?
Nothing.
Nothing. He retired.
He got out of the store because of his health.
He lived a long time then, didn't he?
Yes. He lived right across the street from there.
In the second house.
Hmm. Well, at first he lived on up by the alley, and then he moved down
Up by
there.
CBS?
Yeah.
So that house was torn down recently, because I remember somebody...
Well, now he lived on the other side of the alley, and Gillespie lived right back of that CBS. Then Dewey lived across the alley there.
Yeah.
And then he moved down.
And that house was torn down recently.
Was it?
Yeah.
Do you know, I haven't been down that way for a long time.
Dewey Sheets' house was torn down, I'm going to say in the last... Did anyone else work for Dewey?
Just the grocery boys.
Yes, grocery. And you delivered? I mean, they
Oh,
delivered?
yes, they delivered. There was Bob Bugmeyer worked for him.
Okay.
And the Junior Winget. Let's see.
Do you remember my father working there as a kid?
No,
He worked for Dewey Sheets.
that was before my time then.
You know it would have been, yes, because he worked for Dewey, he thought, in like the mid-30s, maybe late 30s.
Mhm.
So,
Well, it was, Well, you got when Clarence got the store. So I am just terrible about dates.
Well, I have a question, though. How did Drunkard's Curve get its name?
I have no idea.
It was always called that. Huh. The exact date of when Dewey was in operation is kind of cloudy. We know that Amanda Hillbold built the store that you're looking at now in 1927. Supposedly she built it for Dewey Sheets. But Dewey did not take over ownership of that, according to court records, until 1938. But the story goes Amanda built it for Dewey and financed it, and then at some point, when Dewey could afford it, he purchased that property from Amanda Hillbold. His Dewey Sheets were unsure of the date of this picture, and his wife Izzy. Dewey lived at this time down by CBS, across from the alley. That home was torn down in some very recent years. After he moved from that home, he moved directly across the street, south of the store, and in the second house. We will show you that picture in a second. Now, pictures of when Dewey was in the Frank and Joe Shamball store down by the Shell station, but we think we do have cans that Dewey must have moved down from that location to the Logan Walnut Street location once that store was completed in 1927. The cans say 1926, so we feel confident that these were in Dewey's original store. Are those cans in the case that they were in 1926, and behind it is a Hershey's milk chocolate case, and on the one side of that we'll show you in a little bit is Dewey Sheets' signature. I spoke to two people who grew up in that neighborhood in the early 30s, Jim Hone and his sister Carol Hone. Who lived in the Dewey Sheets neighborhood. When did you move into this neighborhood, Jim? Or close to?
I was born in September of '32, and I was 3 when we moved down here. So probably 35, but I don't know what time of year.
Okay. And Dewey was already in business, correct, Carol?
As far as we know. Of course, I was only a year old at the time, but I just remember, even as a little girl, coming up here with my mother and shopping. You know, it was almost a daily occurrence. We had to have a quart of milk or a loaf of bread.
Did you have a charge account?
Yes, we did.
Yeah, always did.
I remember older, every Saturday morning, Mom would come up and pay her bill, and we would charge all week. And then Dad would get paid on Friday night. Saturday morning, she'd come up and pay the bill. But we weren't allowed to just charge anything we wanted. She was real strict, and we had to just do her thing. We'll find the things that she liked.
Now these bottles or cans of baking soda, when did you locate these?
I would say, about 60. See, we started here in '66, so, and we redecorated about 3 or 4 years later. So it would be about 70, 69 or 70. You want to tell them about that?
Well, we had a fellow working with us by the name of Bob Ballinger, who was a pretty good electrician, and when we had to do some rewiring, he went up to the crawl hole to, well, I think at that time one of the first things we wanted to do was put light fixtures across the front up there, and he put us a lot of outlets there for light fixtures, and when he did, he went across these boxes of miscellaneous things here. There was a group as well of a bunch of wooden cans. Is that in that bunch?
No, no.
Where all,
I
are those
don't
wooden
know.
cans anyplace?
But these are, they're wrapped in newspapers, and we think that they must have, my dad always said that he was sure that they must have had bootlegging.
Yeah, there was some bootlegging.
Surely not.
And some of them even had corks in them. But none of these seem to, now this is one that would have a cork in it.
Yeah.
But there's all kinds of old newspapers that they were wrapped in, and we found the date on these, and I can't remember what it was now.
26, I think, isn't it?
On these newspapers.
Well,
He had.
in a can. I suppose you just.
you know the neighbors that lived here when in the 30s when you were here.
Sure. Right down the street from us, over here where Casa Rodriguez is now, was a little house that was out close to the street, and Dewey and Jim Moffett lived there. I don't even know how they spell their name. And in fact, it was a little tiny house, and it was a double, because there were some people by the name of Kings lived on one side, Dewey and Jim lived on the other side, and
Dewey sheets. This picture was given to us by Mrs. Lime, who was a friend of Dewey Sheets and also a friend of Kenny Ritter, who owned a grocery store at the same time Dewey did, and they were dearest of friends.
Of Celina. And I worked for Kenneth Ritter at the house and the grocery from 36 on for 7 years. After I was married, 3 years part-time. Working for Kenneth Ritter at the house and the store, I came in contact with Dewey Sheets, who run the store or owned the store on Logan Street. Dewey first had been with his brother, Joe Sheets, who was a salesman, a wholesale salesman at St. Mary's. And that's how then Joe set Dewey up in his store on Logan Street. And then also Joe, the brother of Dewey, delivered, or I should say was the wholesalesman for Kenneth Ritter's grocery also. And that's how I learned to know Joe.
The Joe Sheets store in St. Mary's, Ohio.
Dewey, of course, through Ritter, but I do know that Dewey Sheets had been in business on Logan Street before I started working at Ritter's, because with meeting the two together, I knew that he had already been in business
Someone.
before that time. And Dewey's wife's name was Izzy, and Kenneth Ritter's wife's name was Virgil, and she also had a beauty shop up. Dewey Sheets was in business prior to 1936, because when I started at Ritter's in 36, Dewey was already in business, he and his wife Izzy. And Kenneth Ritter's wife Virgil had a beauty shop above our store for years. But while I was still there, they built a beauty shop, or fixed the basement in the home at Kenneth Ritter's for Virgil's beauty shop, and she moved that from above bars down to the basement of the Ritter home.
We also spoke to Joe McDonald, an employee of Dewey Sheets in the late 1930s.
Discussed Dewey Sheets grocery store at the corner of Walnut and Logan Street in Celina. I date back to Dewey's store about 1936 or 37, along in there. I was about 12, 13 years old when I first got to know Dewey. And he had quite a store. Just about anything you wanted. And when his store was started or when he went into business, I really don't know, because I lived out at Northwood Park until I was 12 years old, and then we came into Celina and lived on South Mill, just 2 blocks from the store if you went down the alley, and I went down the alley. And he had just about everything you wanted, and had a complete meat department. Had a big porcelain glass front, lighted meat counter, meat cooler, and a big butcher's block and all the knives and a big walk-in cooler and meat grinder, and I think meat brought in a lot of his business. He also had delivery service, which brought in a lot of business, and if I remember right, he delivered twice a day, in the morning and late afternoon. And he had an old 34, 35 Ford pickup truck, half-ton pickup truck that he used for a delivery truck. Had a wooden rack built over the bed and then a canvas, which had been custom made to fit over this wooden rack, and gathered up the orders that people phoned in or brought their list in, and put them in a metal tote pan, and then twice a day we load them in the truck and delivered them all over, especially the southwest part of town, well, the northwest part too, and a few trips on the east side of Main Street, but mainly on that part of town. And during one of Mercerman's strikes, I remember, I don't know what year it was, don't know how long the strike lasted, but it lasted a long time, but I think about half of the western half of Celina would have gone hungry if it wouldn't have been for Dewey and his credit, because as long as they came in and paid a little bit on the bill, whenever they had a few extra cents, why Dewey give them credit. He had a whole drawer full of bills there, and I remember after the strike, everybody, I think, got their bills pretty well paid off. Sometimes $1 or $2 a week, sometimes it'd be down to 50 or 75 cents, but as long as they made a little payment on the bill, why, Dewey seemed to be happy. And I don't remember what he paid for working in the store, but when we weren't filling orders or delivering, why, we were stocking shelves or sacking up potatoes in the back room. He'd have a bin back there, a big pile of bulk potatoes in there, and we'd go back there and sack up paper bags of potatoes, a half pack and a pack, and sometimes we'd sack up bags 25 or 50 cents, because you never knew what people were going to want, and I don't remember the prices of hardly anything, but I do recall that I used to do a lot of shopping for my mother. My father died when I was 12, and so I had a bicycle that it was a super duper job, paid $36 for it, brand new. It had a big basket on the front handlebars and a big basket on a rack on the back fender. And I would go shopping with $3.50 or $4, and I'd end up with more groceries than I could carry home in both of those baskets and in my arms. And so I know groceries were considerably cheaper than they are nowadays, because nowadays $3.50, $4 you can put in your shirt pocket. It's like I was saying, as far as working for Dewey, I don't remember what he paid us, but I was only 13 or 14 years old, and gosh, just getting to drive that delivery truck was almost working for nothing, you know. But didn't have a license, had a driver's permit. But I don't know whether Dewey knew I didn't have a license or not. But we got away with it anyway. And the store it had shelves just packed clear to the ceiling with produce or goods, and had a few packaged cereals and cake mixes and things like that. But I remember to get stuff off the top shelf, we had a pole there with the mechanical fingers on the end of it, and a little steel rod and a lever ran up the side of it, and we'd reach up there and grab those things off the top and pull them out and let loose of them, you know, and the mechanical fingers would let loose, and you'd catch them as they came down. And Dewey and Arlie Gray, who worked for him, Arlie was a meat cutter, they never missed them. Boy, they caught every box as they came down. As some of us that weren't too good as the ball players, why, we'd put them on the floor now and then, but we'd catch most of them. And I remember one time Dewey got in some strawberry jam in jars from some distributor in Lima. And the neck in the jar was so little you couldn't even get a teaspoon in it. And the next time that salesman came in, Dewey took him over the coals, chewed him up one side and down the other because he had a jar that you couldn't get the stuff out of it. And of course, it was jam. You couldn't pour it out, and you had to take it out with a knife. And the next time Dewey got strawberry jam in, it was in a big neck jar. Just little things like that that stick with you. And Harley Gray, he was quite a meat cutter, and he worked for Dewey for a good many years. And I think about the time the war started, or Goodyear got going good over St. Mary's, that Harley quit and went over to Goodyear and went to work. He ended up as a foreman over there. And when I got to be about 16, I went to work for the old Equity Dairy store in Celina. And, he still stopped in at Dewey's all the time. And but then I worked at the Equity Dairy store for 4 years while I was in high school, and shortly after I got out of high school, I went into the Army, was drafted. And I didn't see too much of Dewey's store for, I guess it was a year before I got home on furlough. And every time I'd get home, that was one of the first places I hit, was go in and see how Dewey was. During the war, shortly after the war, it was before I came home, I think he sold the store to Wehrkamps. And just what year it was or how long Wehrkamps had it, I don't know. Maybe somebody else has some more information on that, because I'm not too familiar with the store during Wehrkamps' time. One thing I do know that happened during Wehrkamps' time in the store, used to be a fellow that, by the name of Ray Dock, had a slaughterhouse out west of town. In fact, it's on the farm I live on now. And he did custom butchering. And of course, during the war, meat was rationed and pretty scarce without the food stamps or without meat stamps. And I think Ray used to do his butchering a lot of times about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and that little slaughterhouse had wooden shutters on the windows to shut the windows off. And I could never, after I moved out on the farm, I could never figure out why they had these wooden shutters on these windows, until I got to talking to Wehrkamp one time, and he was telling me about how he used to come out there at 3 o'clock in the morning and pick up a side of beef that Ray had butchered and haul it into the store, and by the time the inspector got there, the meat was all gone. And I guess that went on quite regularly during the war, that if you knew the right people and could keep your mouth shut, you could get plenty of meat. Well, one thing that used to take place back in those days, about everybody had a few chickens. Well, not everybody, but the working people had a few chickens in the backyard in a chicken coop, and we had about 3 dozen chickens, if I remember right. And of course, they had more eggs at times when they were laying good than we needed, and I'd take those eggs down and trade them off for groceries, or sometimes if just plain sell them. Dewey'd call up now and then and want to know if I had a couple dozen eggs, if he was getting low on eggs, or somebody hadn't brought them in from the country yet. And so I'd hightail it down the alley with a couple dozen eggs, and gosh, I can remember getting 75 cents a dozen for eggs back in those days. And that's considerably more than they are now. Of course, they didn't raise chickens by 200 and 300,000 cracks neither. I used to hatch out about 3 hens a year and about a dozen eggs under them, and then that was our chickens for the winter. And, well, Dewey, there was a store down on the end of Mill Street, Mill and Tavel, Ritter's store. And Dewey and Ritter apparently were good friends, because I remember Ritter'd come down, or his delivery boy would come. I think he delivered too, I'm sure he did. And he would come down, and if he ran out of something and Dewey had it, why, he'd pick it up and put it in his inventory, and Dewey'd do the same thing. If he ran out, he'd send somebody down to Ritter's to pick up the goods, and they were in competition with each other, but they were good friends. They helped each other along, and I guess that's what makes Celina.
Dewey Sheets stayed in business till 1945, when his health was failing, and he asked his brother-in-law, Clarence Wehrkamp, if he'd be interested in buying the grocery, and Clarence agreed. And so in 1945, Dewey went out of the business after more than 20 years in the grocery business in the south end of Celina. Dewey lived until June 19th, 1977, where he died at the age of 78.
Well, I'll tell you, Dewey was sick. He couldn't handle a meat cutter anymore, and he wanted to know if I would come up and be interested in taking over the grocery. And I said, yes, I would, but I said, I don't have any money.
That was in 45.
That was in
45.
45. But I said, I got a house that I got it paid for, but I said, I don't know if we can sell it. So I finally got the guy, and he said, I'll buy the house. If I can't sell it, I'll buy it myself. So he did. So that gave us $12,000. We come up to the Celina. We looked the store over, and he said, would you be interested in it, Clarence? I said, yes. I said, I don't know if I have enough money. He says, don't worry about the money. He said, I'll go up to the First National Bank with you, and he says, I'll go your backing. I said, okay, Dewey. I said, I can't beat that. And he said, we'll take an invoice of all the groceries in here, and then you'll take off 20%. I said, well, that's fair enough. And that's how I bought the grocery. Yes, sir, that's how I bought the grocery. And I was in there 2 years, and I had Dewey paid back, and I had a little money in the bank. So I didn't know what to do with my money in the bank, so I said, I had a guy there coming to the grocery all the time. I said, hey, if you see anything good, I said, cheap, buy it, and I want to invest it, because I said I want to invest my money. He said, well, I got 5 cottages out here on the West Bank, he said, and he said, it's a good deal. And I said, how much do they want for it? He said, they're cheap. I said, all right, I'll go out and look. So I went out and looked, and I said, yes, I'll take them. So I had an old guy in there. He was running a little grocery store there in number 7, and he said, you gonna buy these? I said, that's what I'm going to intend to. And he said, what'll I do? I said, I'll tell you what you do. You stay right in here, and I won't raise your rent. That was $30 a month. Now that's the truth. $30 a month. But I said, I won't raise it. But I said, you got to take care of everything in there yourself. But I said, I'll paint the outside and keep everything in good shape. He said, well, that's fair enough. So I come out here and got that. That's how we did it.
We bought the cottages and had the grocery store, and we thought we were smart and could run them both, but it didn't work out that way. We couldn't do it.
Did you have anyone working in the store with you?
Yes. Lucille Steiner, she was at that time when she started working for us. She was a jewel. She was really a good help. She never sat down. She was always busy, always doing something, stocking shelves or...
Now, was your store the type of store that people came in and shopped, or did they come in and you filled their list? Or
Yes.
Yeah, we filled their list. That's right.
Incredible.
We were just talking about that maybe yesterday or the day before. They'd come and stand in front of the adding machine, and they'd say, I need a can of peas. Will you go get the can of peas? You come back and set it down, and then they need a can of corn. It was right beside the can of fruit.
Yeah. Walk back and get that.
We did a lot of walking,
Yeah.
but it was worth it. It was real nice.
Yeah.
We both enjoyed it a
Boy,
lot.
sure.
All right. Where can we go?
Joe, we had the cottages here. We had 10 cottages. And I was supposed to run the cottages, and he was supposed to run the grocery. But it didn't work out like that. It was just too much work
Just too
for
much
us.
for us.
So then we had to decide if we would sell the grocery or sell that. So we decided to sell the grocery, which was a good move. Because that's about the time the supermarkets started coming in town.
When you sold, thing you missed most when you left the store?
People.
I would bet.
Yes, sir, people.
We made so many friends.
Oh,
and
yeah.
everyone.
we made-
That was an awful poor neighborhood down there, where we were. But you know, they were awfully nice people and very honest.
And they was honest people. They was poor people, but they was honest as days
Yeah.
long.
Did they ever have to work for you to pay their bill?
No.
Okay.
We had boys come in every
4
evening
o'clock
and
after
deliver
school.
groceries for her. We used to deliver groceries, around. Yeah, we
All
delivered
over town.
groceries all over town, We had a boy out in school, and because he's out of school, we'd have to find another boy to run our delivery wagon,
They'd start when they're 16.
Yeah.
As soon as they get their driver's license. Well, then they could work until they graduated from high school. Then they had to get a better job, But it was usually boys from that neighborhood.
Uh-huh.
We've had 2 brothers work for us.
Yeah.
Bob Bubmeyer. Gosh, I don't know. Jerry Bartholomew.
Yeah.
So many. 2 of the Jeffries boys. In fact, Bob Jeffries, no, his son works there now.
Out of Broadway, yeah. Meat
Yeah,
cutter.
it's his son.
Did you cut your own meat and stuff? Or?
Everything. We used to get beeves hang them in there, and I'd carry out a 200-pound beef thrown on that big old round block, cut it up. Then I finally got an electric saw, and then that helped.
So when you first here, you did all the cutting by hand?
By hand, that's right. Anybody want a round steak, I cut it by hand.
And we also, Thursday noon was closing. Everything in town shut down on Thursday afternoon. And we would buy chickens, a crate of chickens, and we'd clean the chickens and get them ready for the weekend. Thursday afternoon.
Yeah, that's
clean
right.
the chickens and cut them up.
I don't think Sarah will appreciate that. So what? But I clean chickens. Worst job I ever. I hated that job. Everyone ought to be made to do that job once. And then when you see that, you just sit there.
We did her, boy.
I did it once, and then I found a lady in St. Henry, Ohio, that would clean them and put them ready to freeze for 25.
And got them ready to sell until Huffman's. Now that was our big break.
Yeah.
When they came to town and
Yeah.
opened that out there, then we could get our chickens already cleaned
Yeah.
from them.
Refrigeration, did you always have electric, or did you ever
Yeah.
have...
Oh, yeah, we always had electric here.
One of the stores said they cooled with sawdust for quite a while and ice.
Ice box?
Yeah.
That's, yeah.
Yeah.
That bill.
Uh-huh.
So it had like a walk-in cooler or something?
Yeah, great big walk-in cooler. We'd hang up maybe 2 or 3 bees in that
Almost
thing.
as big as this room.
Yeah.
wasn't it?
Yeah, just hanging big hooks in there, hanging in there.
And then when you sold the store, you sold it to Joe
Joe
Sanders.
Mhm.
Was that any relation? I mean, or just you just happened to
No,
put
we
it...
knew we were friends.
Did he live down?
No.
No. He
Well,
lived down there later then?
yes,
Next door?
he lived in back of the store in the house that we had lived in.
Yeah.
Oh, you lived right beside
Right
the
behind
store.
us,
Okay,
right
now we'll have
behind
to
the
film that because I was
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
having you in
Yeah.
two
And
different
then
places.
when we sold the store to Joe, well, of course we moved out here and we've lived in this little place then ever since.
Okay. Now, hours. What kind of hours did you put in, especially in 1950?
Well, we opened up at 7 o'clock, and we at 7 to 6 through the week. And Saturday night, 9.
9 on Saturday night. And we was there all those hours all the time. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd go home and fix our lunch so that one of us could stay at the store, and then I would eat while I was fixing. Then he'd come over and eat his lunch,
That's right.
and I'd go back to the store. So there'd be someone there all the time. Of course, we still
And
had.
Benny Wooster, you remember Benny Wooster?
Just died, didn't he?
Yeah.
Benny just died last week.
Yeah.
I wish we had started this a few weeks, because he was a man like Gene Spicer and Gene Spicer's father that went to all of these.
He would come in, he had a tray about that long and
Yeah.
so wide, and he would stack that real high with all kinds of
One
rolls
hand.
and donuts, and he'd come and carry it in this way up over his head.
Yes.
I work with Benny's daughter now at the school right now, and she told me that she and Benny had talked about this project, because I'd talked to Susie Wooster about it a month ago, and things just, Benny died before we got it rolling, so.
Yeah, it has been. I was surprised. I didn't know Benny was, that he wasn't with.
What else? I know the milk was delivered by Gene Spicer, or
Yeah.
and then Benny Wooster. Was there anything else locally, like your meat? Where did that come from?
Oh, Replo in.
He killed it. He killed it for us. We had him to kill beef. If we wanted a big beef, we'd say, well, now I'd like to have a 250-pound beef, or whatever I'd like to have, And he would kill it over at Minster and deliver it, bring it over here to us. And nothing to see blood running out of yet. Is that fresh.
Yeah.
And we always kept sawdust in our cooler, to keep blood from running over there. But a lot of hard work.
Now, like for instance, the scraps when you cut. What did you do with now they pick the meat up? I forget the outfit that picks up all the.
We had Windsor.
Yeah, okay, they're still around. Okay.
Yeah,
still around.
They pick up our bones and any offals that we had.
Yeah.
They'd pick that up.
Did you make anything special like?
No.
What do I think? Pork. What am I
I know
thinking of? Cracklings or
Blood pudding and
stuff like that. Did you have?
No, we never did.
No, we never did.
No.
We had our hands full taking care of what we did.
Before we leave the Wehrkamps store, I must give Clarence a chance to defend himself. Joe McDonald, Clarence, accused you of being a meat bootlegger during World War II. I just have to ask you if that was true.
That's true. That's the only way we can get enough meat to take care of our customers. So we went out there and killed the beef, and I took the top off of my truck so they wouldn't know I was carrying illegal meat. Bring it back to the grocery, and I'd have my customers. I said, I'll have meat in the morning. Come in early, and they'd come in and get their package of meat, and everybody was happy. Yep, that's the way I did. I had to bootleg a little, but it was all honest, though.
Oh, that's bootlegging.
Yeah, bootlegged it, but that's what they wanted.
And that's what Clarence and his wife did for years, do what the customers wanted. Clarence and Virginia stayed in business until the late 1950s, 1959 to be exact, when they sold the store to Joe and Rita Sanders, who were friends of theirs. We'll visit the Sanders now. Stores took place, but she also listed previous owners, all the owners, the approximate years and location, and just helped us out immensely. So we do thank you, Mrs. Bolenwalker. And now we'd like to share with you a day at the Senior Citizens Center where we spent, I think it was last April, and people simply remembered grocery stores and brought in pictures and information, shared some stories. We'd like to share that afternoon with you right now.
Prices, if you remember the kids working in the store, and then I would like to maybe at this point stop, and I'll come back to cases. I'd like to find out what groceries you specifically have information on, and then maybe we can break up and record. I know there's some pictures, and record some of this information, because it is going to be something that you know, if we don't do it now, this information is going to be gone. And we didn't wait long. We just didn't come across this idea soon enough. But I think it will be something that the community will appreciate when we get it finished. I'm curious. I know Lowell Dock. We talked to Lowell and interviewed Lowell. His wife was a mill house. Is that correct? And they owned the Main Street Market at the corner of Main and Fayette, which is, I guess the latest store would be Goldstein's, or not the latest store, but that's the one I associate. What other stores do you have that maybe I can add some information, or maybe they're new stores? What particular store do you have in mind that you have some information on?
I got a picture of my uncle at Joe Small Stick.
Bless you. That has been, we called it Small Stick, and I apologize for that, but on the phone, and I don't hear all that well anyway, but on the phone it sounded like Small Stick, and I went to a city council meeting the other day where I was promptly chewed out by John Garman for calling it Small Stick. He asked me how I spelled Small Stick, and I told him, he says, Schmall Stick, I guess. So, but we have that now.
Well, don't feel too badly, because when they got married, my mom and dad, my dad was always in woodworking, so he had a whole bunch of sticks. It was just small sticks, you know. They hung that all over their house. When they came back from their honeymoon, their whole house.
That's how that is an honest name, then.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anyway, we will get to that. We have very little information on this Small Stick grocery. We do have some information. Pete Fisher. Now, I should probably identify that store if you don't remember. The Small Stick grocery was located on Tavell Street just before you got to Main, on the north side of the street. Not even a half a block. It's just a very short area there, and it was just torn down recently. 2 or 3 years ago, it was torn down. And we have a picture of that store when it was Pete Fisher's. We have Johnny Fisher standing out in front of it. I think some of you might know Johnny, who works for McCurran Brothers. He won a bicycle through a promotion that Gene Spicer's father, M.L. Spicer, ran through his dairy, and we have that picture. So we do have, and we also have the sign that was one of the original signs, but it was an early Fisher sign. It's over in Minden, Ohio. Somebody has taken that, and they have it in their house, and they have called, but I have not gotten over to Minden to take that, but we will. What's another grocery store?
Fetzer's.
And that's one that's really was a mystery. Fetzer's, probably the second phone call that I received that night, and I'm not sure when that article appeared, the first one.
Well, Fetzer's built Buns Beanery, which a lot of these people would recognize, and it was a restaurant, a grocery store, and a filling station. We had pumps out in front, and I've got some pictures here of all that.
Okay.
Then, Uncle Frank Fetzer, this is his daughter here, Mrs. Adams from Sydney. She's come all the way from Sydney. And then, in 31, Uncle Frank built the store on Logan.
He didn't build it.
He didn't build it, but I mean, he went in there.
He remodeled it.
He remodeled it. Okay? That was Fetzer's grocery store. They had groceries.
This place on Logan Street, it was a saloon.
Years ago.
There was a depot right across, there was a railroad track there. The old CH&D depot was over there, and people would get off the train and come over there and get their beer or whatever they needed. This long building was a grocery. And it was a accommodation house.
because when we remodeled it, we took the bells out of the room back there. If somebody wanted to drink back in the room, they could ring the bar. So they could get their drink back in the room. And that's what, you made a grocery store where the bar was, you made a grocery store.
And this, we've been trying to trace some times on, Fetzer's has been a mystery. 1931, and that is on the Logan Street.
Right.
1931. And
1931.
And when was it on the, where Bunn's Beanery?
The one on Anthony was way before that.
Okay.
That was in, where did I get my paper?
Okay.
That was back in 26 when he built that on.
So he was there for roughly 5 years.
Well, Mrs. Fetzer run that even while he was on Logan running that one.
They had a monopoly, didn't they?
They were busy.
Well, I'm glad I got this information because the person that called me was pretty correct in that he gave me the year 1933. He remembered walking down there and standing beside the old potbelly stove.
I got that here. I got the pictures of the old grandpas that used to come in, such as Mr. Henry Gertz, Mr. Frank King, the Jeffries, and we had an old potbelly stove in there, and they'd chew their tobacco, and then they'd get the spit to them, and they'd go. That was on Logan. Okay?
Yeah, and we will a little bit take your pictures and
See?
we'll take your pictures a little bit and put those on.
I've got several pictures.
I would like to see those. Does anyone in here remember being in Fetzer's?
Oh,
And see, there was another thing. There was another thing is that the names that I was getting over the phone, we had this as Fletcher's. I remember that for a while. And then we had about 40 different spellings before we finally got that correct.
There's the store.
So is that the
That's on those.
That's the depot. That's the depot there.
So where is John's Garment?
On down, farther. On west.
It's just the old, right there, you turn to that first.
Tracks, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was, see, there was a track right here.
Yeah.
And then the
On
track
down
that's
west.
still down there, it goes past the lumber yard. See, there's two railroad tracks there.
That's the store. It's east of the river.
Okay, all right. Well, we've been trying, Paul Fisher, who has been trying to research the titles at the records office. We've had trouble with this because if you're a lot off, you go through all that work and you gotta back and move over a lot, and this one has been kind of a problem for him. So I think we're close enough. I want this to be historically accurate as possible, but I know we're not going to get it perfect, but if we can get within a year or so, I think we will. And this has been a blessing because people did write down who and when these pictures.
This was before. That's when he was.
This is the one on,
That's the same store.
Same store.
These are all Logan Street.
okay.
That's
Would
before.
you mind if I just kind
Here.
of sent these around? I think you'll
Logan,
enjoy
pass
seeing.
them around. Now, here's the guys that used to stick them.
Well, we need places like that. There's only one left in town. I think Booker's Garage is the only place you can go and do that. I just went by Booker's. Just coming over. Now this is.
That's the old store.
And this is here.
And we lived in the back part of the store. Okay.
If you remember
Now,
that.
in 1942,
There's two railroad tracks right there. I'm not sure.
roadway trucks were hit and went into the front part of our store.
We're gonna have to get you out here. You're gonna have to do all this again, okay?
I was supposed to go to New York then. There's this that I couldn't go.
And this is.
That's That's on the front. And Bell, and that's Nell. And that's the sheriff. My cousin.
Well, you know what, we ran across his name, maybe before we got it. That name has, I remember talking to somebody about that. See, a lot of these conversations have been very similar.
Now this was on the end of the street.
Where this is the Mr. Goodbar. And that's she behind the counter. We just worked all the time. You have to make it dirty. Oh, that's you. Dirty punch. Now this goes to the place.
I just remember in the audience where Mom was held up. Her mother was held up. I heard all.
If you would just send us a copy of that, that would be wonderful. That's Jim robbery. This grocery store business is wicked.
And when you said Van Word, I wondered if there was a connection. Because I think that's where they were picked up at.
That'll be interesting. I'll let you look at those if you wish. They are kind of interesting, and a lot of these pictures will be done with today. We have a machine here that they will still and freeze them, but I really would like to get you off and let you, both of you talk about both of those stories. As a matter of fact, we have a camera, Paul, that possibly there's no another room. That's from the rest.
The boys would come from high school, stop and get a drink, and go to Mercer's for 7 cents an hour.
Great camera shot.
Mr. Kelly?
Yeah.
There's a room right adjacent to this.
Good thing.
I think it's easier to go through that door and then it's right in there.
Okay.
And there's power in there.
Okay, great.
Light.
Well, that's why I wanted to have this, because that has cleared up a lot of questions we had about Fetzer's, and apparently it was a famous, and bless her heart, I've been telling everybody to write this information down, and she has, and there were several people that called today. As a matter of fact, I ran down this morning and picked up a group of pictures and filmed them at the lady's house of Ritter's. And I think most of you, I'd like to talk about Ritter's for a moment, because even though I remember Ritter's, and it wasn't...
I don't know when that was built. Does
Well,
anybody know?
Well, I'm really confused on if a sham ball was in there.
No.
That's
That's down on Mill.
Yeah, I know. Was he ever in that location?
Not that I know. Not that I know
Was
of.
it Frank Shamball?
No. Joe. That was on I think that's Joe.
it ended up at Jerry's Market.
Right.
That's when Shamwell, it was before Shamwell, who was? Jeff was before Shamwell.
Wow, now there... Yeah.
Then Shamwell moved in there, and then Frank Shamwell. Then his son Joe on it. And then when he couldn't do it anymore, then he turned over to Jerry Reed.
You had a store, I saw your hand. What was the store that you have information on? Do you?
No, well, my grandfather's creamery in
Let me try to guess now. Is this a Garmin or okay, good. And now is this are you related to John then? Okay, because John and I talked just a few minutes before city council meeting. And I'm going to get John in and talk to him because he just remembers all of these things.
My grandpa and 3 on Fayette Street, I believe it was.
He should have been. He's on the young kid.
Okay, now I'm trying to, is that where you can still see a concrete footer or something still there?
I just find out.
Okay, I guess, and Gene Spicer didn't come, he brought a list of his father's deliveries, maybe that, something like that is still, and it had all the addresses. And so that's kind of easy to research.
Well, yeah. Well, then.
Then they had the Garmin Dairy, but that was,
That was
they
where?
bottled the milk later with Garmin Dairy. So.
And where was that located?
There was a
Where the restaurant is?
bottled milk and they had a Garmin Dairy.
Oh, you're talking about the Celina? I know it's off Fayette Street on the,
Starting the alley.
that's on that street. Yeah, where the bank is now. Where the bank is now. Where the bank is now. Yeah, where the bank is now. Have you ever heard of Mercer?
Oh, here's a great grocery store apparently.
You better believe that. Sure.
And I hear 2 different pronunciations, either Masarvis or Meservis. But it's located, or was located, on Fayette Street.
Yeah.
Well, actually, it started on Main Street. If you remember, I don't think anyone will remember that. It started out as a Loudon grocery store on Main Street. And again, the location, because the buildings are, at that time, they were so narrow, and they've changed somewhere around the Style Shop area. But I don't know which building it would have been. Or which section of it. But it was in there, and it was a Loudon, and then Masarvi became a partner with Loudon, and then he ended up being the sole proprietor of it, and he moved that operation. Right, moved it down to Fayette where the music store roughly is today.
Them buildings is all told on, there's old wood buildings.
Right.
I want to show you a picture of that West Fayette Street.
And
This is just one thing.
what year would this be?
I don't know. Way before my time. I've got one of those. That's my dad's writing on the back.
What is this one?
This is Joe Schmidt's grocery store.
Oh, you know what? I never heard of that grocery store until an hour ago, and another lady sent a phone number for me to call, or was this you? Okay. Well, somebody else remembered, look at this picture. This is incredible. This has to be, is this Jacob's Jewelry area? Is that?
No, that's 215 South Main. That's a little beyond what used to be the Manhattan Restaurant.
Oh, you're way down by
Oh, the alley there.
but the coffee shop just south of that. Okay, now there's a...
North Main.
Coffee shop was the Manhattan.
Right.
The Manhattan, and this was two doors south. Delwig Saloon was next door, and then the grocery store.
How come you people don't remember all these times?
That was in our heyday.
I'm going to send this around because if you have an idea of time here.
Yes, that's baby there. On the showcase is Madonna Butel.
Right here?
I thought that was 2 years old at the time. She was my age, so that would make that about
1932. You're right. I'm going to pass that around because that's really a great picture.
No, this was on Main.
And
I think on that corner there is where the wine store first started. See that brick building on the corner?
this is the wine store.
Yeah, that's the only thing left.
So we are looking at
Right by there.
that Masarvi right there.
Yeah.
Now, I do have 2 incredible incredibly neat pictures of the inside of Masarbi's, one on this location, and the grandson lives in Coldwater, and he had apparently found a small picture of the inside, and he took it to Terry's, I believe, wherever that is, over here, and had it, both of them blown up, and they're beautiful pictures. And we have, and I want to show you some of these pictures that we have in a little bit. I have them all on video, and while I do that, I think we will maybe put some of yours on video. Fred Stroll has been a great help because he collects postcards. He has an incredible collection of early Celina, and you can't go by stamp dates on postcards because a lot of people bought postcards just as photographs just to keep, and that's neat, and then they might have mailed them 20 years later. We've gotten in some trouble trying to date them like that, so you're real smart on that. Quick. But this, I would love to find and make sure we're passing it around that when it comes to you, you grab it. No one leave it unless you have all 5 or 6 or whatever you have. But the Masarbi grocery store, I'll tell you a quick story. In 1924, an Aladdin lamp was purchased at the Masarbi store, and I have a picture of that, and I have the bill of sale and the warranty yet because Ed Freewalt still has that down at his house, and he called me, and I went down and filmed that. So Masarbi's apparently was a neat store. The other one I probably have received more information on, I think, than all the stores, and any one particular store would be Valport, on the corner of Market and Walnut. How many went into Valport? Oh, yeah. All right, I do have, and Paul has researched the time on that, and we think that grocery store started right around 1890. In other words, not exactly. We had one date, I think it said 1893, and one date said in the record book something about 1885, but we have to clarify that.
It was old, because they had 2 stores. There was a grocery store, and then there was another room over there. There was a front door, and you could go in the other room and you could buy pottery and then stuff like that.
I tell you what,
For a house.
Yeah, because we got into a deed. It said something about something was deeded, and we read that deed, and then they were moving something. There were pots and plates and things in this description of what was in that building.
When the bank bought that whole corner there, that one building was that size. They couldn't get a clear deed to that piece of property, and for a long time that held up the bank because they couldn't do nothing. They couldn't move because they couldn't find all the errors because there was part of the Portman grocery and tied in with Albert Mercer's family. See?
Okay, now I remember seeing that name.
And that's see, Mrs. Mercer was in Portman.
Okay.
And see, that's the reason that they really had a hell of a time. They didn't know whether they were going to get the bank built or not.
I'll put these pictures on of Portman in a little bit. We have, I can show you, I think, a couple, and then we have them. This is out in front of well, not out in front of Portman's, but that is Portman's huckster wagon. And it says, I think it says on there Val Portman, I can't see it.
Oh, that's what they call it.
This is that corner. As a matter of fact, I want to ask you a question now since we're on that block. We have a mystery of a grocery store that was right across the street. But this is the corner of, this is the Portman grocery up here. This is Fayette, and right in here probably would be Masarbi's. But this might even be before Masarbi's. I think it is. This is the Portman grocery as it looked in...
Yeah, that looks natural.
When I first seen it.
I can't think of the name at the time of this.
I can't.
Yeah. You remember that? Right.
We moved to Mercer County in 26. From that time on, that's some of that stuff was here.
While I'm at that intersection of Fayette and Walnut, where I'm going to say Sam Dixon's used car lot is or was, whoever owns it now.
There was a grocery on that corner.
Called Durban, I think. Can anyone verify?
I don't know. I remember the grocery, and there was a blacksmith shop right back of it.
Well, now I know you're accurate there because one of our conversations said that they remembered the blacksmith shop, but not the grocery store. But I talked to a Mrs. Schroyer, and I think most of you might remember George. George just died.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and she gave me a great deal of information, and she's got some pictures for me, and I'm going to run out to get those. And she mentioned, because they had a store in Tammy, and I think they moved into Durban. And A. Durban, a son, moved into Celina, and she just couldn't quite, and she's going to look that up for me, who that was and when it was. So that's a grocery store I don't know how long it was in operation. I don't think it was there a great 20 years. This one, let's go back to Main Street. And Elmore, Brandon, and this would be in...
Elmore, I was on the east side of the street.
Yeah. But what building, was it in Wilson? No, that's not right. Or was it in Wilson Shoe Store?
in that area, I don't remember.
And then later there was another grocery.
Meat market.
Yeah.
Skyler. I hope that you're getting all this down because we're going to forget. Skyler's Meat Market, which is also a grocery, I think, or...
Not too many groceries.
Mostly meat.
And then... Did it become a
dime store.
Okay, that's okay. So at least we've run through that, and the trouble that we're finding is so many of these stores were passed on as groceries, but the titles weren't switched. They kept ownership and just let them have the business. But that is one we do have a couple very nice pictures of the Brandon grocery store, and these are Dorothy Brandon. So.
More pictures back there someplace.
Okay, I think Lowell's kind of catch all back there.
Catch them all.
Watch
Okay.
him, he will.
And I'm going to put that one, that's one of ours. And then, in a few minutes, I'm going to let you come up in a little bit, and we'll put these right here. You can take the ones that are yours, and we'll get you over and try to, are these, okay, this is the Fetzer. Another grocery store, and Shannon, I can't think of the name of it. We said, oh yes, the Lynn grocery store. No information on it. Does anyone remember a Lynn grocery store? Again, I don't think this one existed for a great deal of time, but it was in the area of the People's Bank, the Coldwater branch on
I remember that. It was there was a brick house on the corner there. And this little Lynn's grocery was, when we went to school, when I went to school and walked by there, it was back in, kind of down in. Do you remember that?
Would that have been Busy Bee?
No.
No.
It's up there.
Then,
It's up where the bank is.
imagine it was
I
closed.
know.
Okay, that is one I don't think it was real old, and I don't think it lasted long, but somebody remembered it. It apparently was somebody's neighborhood grocery.
426.
No, I think it was, I think this actually probably was in the 40s or maybe 50s.
I don't remember.
I'm not
No, I think it's what before that.
Was it?
Yeah.
Like,
Have you got anything on Hendrix?
What? Hendrix. No.
Down by
Hendrix.
the IT school?
Right. Everyone mentioned it.
That was no information.
Well,
Yeah. That wasn't the Creamery or whatever it was right next door, or
No.
in the block over?
No, it was right across the alley from, next door there.
Is that building still there?
No, on,
Part of,
Sonner
some of
Jones monument place there.
the,
Both
that's
buildings.
some of it.
Hendrick had,
That's not
he had
all.
two buildings, he had a grocery store and he had a meat market, two big
Yeah.
buildings.
Well, what isn't there a building down?
It's a
So
monument.
what was that? Was that always a monument place?
No, that was part of the meat market. That was the meat market.
I know right where it is, because I went down there, and the kids went down and filmed together.
There was two buildings there.
Heine?
Henry.
Honey and George.
George did. George didn't give us a
No, but I didn't remember, Honey,
Why would have remembered him as Heine? I'm curious, you have an album here.
One thing you didn't mention about Mercer, because it blew up during the Second World War.
Okay. I did know that, and I think, was it 1941?
Probably, I know it'll be about 42, I was overseas.
Okay, Miss Servy's or Miss Sarvy's grocery blew up, and the grandson was a little vague as to what happened there, something, but he did have a story. But that grocery did explode, and
I think it was,
was that the
right
one?
next door. Who was that? Kennison's building blew up.
Oh.
And that was probably the end of the grocery.
Okay.
I don't remember that part. Kennison's the one that had to blow up.
And what else?
Is that with a hardware store?
What grocery is this?
Oh, that's Jerry's. This is Jerry's.
Kennison's grocery.
This is the one I was calling him. I have pictures
Oh, yeah.
on the inside.
Okay, yes, yes.
That was a hardware store.
And this is surprisingly an old grocery store too, because of
I realized it was the last one in the town.
Oh yeah.
It was going out of business, so I took these pictures.
Thank goodness you had that foresight.
Yeah, well, I wish we would have done that with more of them.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, you know, I did get in. There are several stores that we have gotten into. Sarah, Katie and Sarah went into the market on Wilkins and Elm, which Bolenbacher's it wasn't called that. What was it called, Katie?
Celina Home Supply.
Celina Home Supply. Do you remember
No, that was Lester Bombach. Because we used to trade there. I'd send my kids down the alley to buy bread. And that was back in the 1940s.
Right.
What street you say that was?
Wilson and Elm. This is a block.
I know, that was just get out of
It's still there, the building.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And the kids ran in and they told them they opened the pop cooler up and it still had an old bottle of pop in it. And there's still signs on the wall. And you know, other than just a few stores that have disappeared, but right now we're getting enough pictures. I think we can. And if we don't have pictures of the stores, well, I found today, I'm going to mention several names that you will know. Dewey Sheets.
Yeah.
Dewey Sheets.
Down on Logan.
How can you remember all these stores? I studied this for 2 weeks, I'm still confused. Logan and Walnut. And you have so many stores in that area. My goodness, right in that area, I know there are a half a dozen stores right there.
Down by the railroad track, and this was just.
Dewey Sheets was there in, I think, 38, and stayed until 45, and of course we have the store, but today I got a picture of Dewey Sheets in a tuxedo, and his wife, and they were best friends with
By Sheets and Ritter.
Ritter, thank you. And I can't think of Ritter's first name.
Kenny.
I knew I'd get that. Kenny Ritter and Dewey must have been dear friends, because I have about a half a dozen pictures, and I think I can show you some of those. And just those will bring back memories. Just seeing those people like Merle Casey, I'm sure most of you. And that's what, the only thing I remember Merle is, grayish hair. I don't remember him ever having dark hair. But I still see him behind that meat counter. I can still see that as clear today.
Have you heard of Joe Butcher? It's on Logan Street.
Somewhere in the Fickard, was that Fickard and May and we do have that. Now one thing we have...
Joe Butcher started.
Right.
Yeah.
One thing we've been somewhat negligent on is that the ones that are, what I call new, you know, that I remember, I know that we can get that information. We've been searching the older ones first, but I think the way we're going to approach it is each kid, no matter how unwilling or whatever, we'll take a building and what we don't get today, we will find them, and we do have Busher and we have Pickard in there and a May.
Remember the willow on down the street?
Right. One thing I want to, and I don't want to get off the topic, but I hope this is only the first project that we have with you people, because we have to get all this knowledge and we have to get it down and we have to get it documented, because there's so many things we're finding in Celina that, you know, it can't be left unrecorded. And I'm going to tell you, he lives right over here on Crone or just to John Barber. His father owned Busy Bee Grocery, which was located South Main, where the empty lots are. And what would be the next building? What's another building though that you can orient? Is three?
Yeah,
Right next to the.
No, I think it was farther south than that.
I mean, yeah, but those empty lots right in there. Again, there's 4 lots recorded, and we're just going to have to go through and find until we find the barber.
That would have been Harry Barber.
Right, that's right.
Yeah, that was right on the alley. That was right in the alley where the new,
Well, then this might be the second lot then, because the information I received on the phone and from John was he thought it was right next to the barber shop. And we do have pictures of Busy Bee.
No, that's not correct, because next door to Diedrich's barber shop, there was a plumbing shop.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. There was a plumbing shop, and it had to be south part of the...
was that Kennison?
No.
That was
Kenny Dietrich's barbershop.
Is that Chevy?
Yeah.
No, not Kenny, it was Homer.
His dad, Kenny was in there too.
Are there any more grocery stores that you have before I get this? I've not mentioned that you have. Pardon?
There's Bullbarger, one of Mercer's bankers.
Smith Cash Grocery. And I talked to Mrs. Bolenbacher, and my father. And I don't know why I didn't go and ask him this, but he used to work at Smith Cash Grocery and drove one of those. But I think it was a truck. I don't think it was.
Well, it's still
Yeah.
the same thing.
And I talked to Mrs. Bolenbacher, and she was a little unsure of when it existed, but I think it.
Well, did you see it? No.
Bolenbacher took it over from Smith in somewhere around 38 and went out of business during the war.
Bolenbacher worked for Smith.
Right.
And then he bought it.
But I haven't found out when Smith started it yet, but we will.
Oh, I know. I used to go there and get bologna when I went to the West.
Well, how much did it cost?
Oh, dear, I forget.
What's kind of is we have some of these ads where it's
Well, I
incredible.
only bought a slice. That's all I ate for dinner that day.
And what year was that?
Well,
Don't be so shy now.
when we graduated. Well, it must have been in 31 or something like that. 31.
Yeah.
If I was in grade school, then.
Any other groceries that I've not
There was a
mentioned?
grocery where Gately's and they got.
That I think was Smith.
You got that.
Right there on the alley.
Yeah.
Frank Fisher's. He was on.
Now, which neighborhood? There was a Fisher grocery store all over this town at one time.
And that would be on the corner of Fulton and Sugar.
Okay, and Lee Fisher has really been a big, big help. He has an album like this, and he doesn't have the house. No, he doesn't have that house but I know there's a fairly new home there now.
There's a brand new
Was
one.
it?
They're coming around that, this is the old one.
And we need to get that lot, and Lee was kind of unsure of the date as to when that store. Fisher's, I think they had 5 stores. The one up, would it have been in the Manhattan?
The first store they had, old Frank, and then these other ones that come on before. Frank had a big store, a meat market, right side of Manhattan.
By the, where Stallman's or something?
Yeah, well, that's where he had his meat market and grocery there. And then, and he told me, you know, that, well, at that time, these people uptown, on Main Street, he delivered the meat and the grocery. And when the grocery man, the wholesale man come around, they wanted the money. And he had sometimes had to borrow money to pay the wholesale, because maybe somebody down the street owed him $200-300. And he told me one day, he said, if I'd have moved off of Main Street, then when he moved on to his house, that's for his. And he said, I'd be better off today. He said, if I'd got off of Main Street 5 years ago, I'd be better off today. And
So that was Joe and Pete.
Dad, old Frank.
And then a store that is, I've got a great shot of it. As a matter of fact, I'm going to put that in and let you see that. Oh, do you? Yeah. I might have you fast forward. Put that in there. Joe Fisher had a store in the 30s, think in terms of CBS on the corner.
Right there.
This is it. Thank you. And this,
Still it now.
this